it really comes down to Etienne. I mean, $27 million is too much for Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd's probably going to hit the open market. Devin Lloyd, maybe they make a pitch to him and try to keep him. Who knows? But I think this is really an Etienne conversation. And you've been a big Etienne guy. You're a big supporter, and I've been a big Etienne guy, quite frankly. But you've now taken on his agency in representation of Travis Etienne. And like, what? I guess if you are his representation, what are you thinking? What do you want? I would assume you want to hit the open market?
Yeah, I mean, more than likely, because that's where the money's going to be, right? Like, and once again, this is me speaking as a representation and not someone who covers the Jaguars who wants to see Travis Etienne back in Jacksonville. But I think if I'm his agent, I'm telling him, by all means, hit the open market, because there's going to be a lot more money to get, I feel like, than if you stay in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and so then you have the Jag side of things. You got $14 million. Is it worth? You're paying very little for that position. Is it worth it? And then where do you think other free agents come into play versus, okay, are we going to draft this position and just be really inexpensive at the running back spot? Because I've seen some things. I think I saw something, Kenneth Walker to the Jags, like as a prediction. And I have no idea who this was, right? I just somebody predicting where guys are going to go. I think it was like Arizona for ETN, and then it was the Jets for ETN. Of course, he said he doesn't really want to go to the cold, so that will be an interesting part of the conversation. I think he'll go wherever the money is, most likely. But I don't see the Jags doing that, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't see the Jags saying, okay, we don't want ETN, but let's go get Kenneth Walker. I think it's more about, do we want to pay a running back X amount of dollars, or do we want to go younger and draft that position and make it more of an inexpensive position, quite frankly, because you can, and it's worked in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Hamby, this is something you can look up, because I don't have, obviously a laptop or anything in front of me, but, like, if ETN was going to make $14 million as a franchise tag player, where does that put him in terms of the highest paid running backs in the league? Because I'm very curious about that. Now, to answer the question, like, here's how I feel about it, Brent. If you give Travis Etienne a 3-year deal, yeah, it's going to come with a little, like, hesitation, just because we've seen the shelf life of running backs. All of a sudden it's good, and then the next year it's bad, right? And then all of a sudden now you're stuck footing that bill. So I understand that there's a hesitation to give him the 3-year deal, because then what happens, maybe he gets a little more complacent, he's comfortable, he's made his money now. And once again, I don't think Travis Etienne's built from that kind of cloth, but you always worry about when you give a guy a new contract, if the work ethic's going to still be there, as opposed to, playing in a contract year. So there's a little bit of a risk there. But when it comes to the franchise tag, I mean, yeah, obviously Etienne probably wouldn't like it. His management probably wouldn't like it. You may have to deal with holding out a little bit until he gets a new deal, but you feel like eventually he would show up to camp. So you have maybe a little bit of a disgruntled player. But my biggest thing, and I've said this all along, is, are you confident right now with Tootin and LaQuinn Allen carrying the reps of the backfield? And once again, like, Tootin has showed some great things, LaQuinn Allen a little less, but he has showed some good things as well. But are you confident with them in terms of pass blocking? Are you confident in them in terms of being able to catch the ball? Obviously, between the tackles, maybe isn't an issue with Tootin, and LaQuinn Allen seems to fit that mold as well. But I think there's a lot of unanswered things right now that we haven't seen this past season that you're putting in the bucket of hope that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, and Hamby, I know you're going to jump in here for a second. I think there's so much to talk about on this, because of all the things you just said, of all the things we've been saying for months and months. But I really try to come back to the logic part of it. So I take your thought process and a lot of people's thought process, I think even in the chat. You just won 13 games, and you feel like you were pretty damn good, and you're going in a direction. And he was one of your best guys, if not the best guy, from the front to the back of the season, honestly. So do you want to take away from that? All right, so then the next thing is $14 million for a running back over a long period of time makes zero sense. $14 million for this team for 1 year. They don't have a ton of money at their disposal. Does that even make sense? Probably not, especially if you think the value, and maybe Delphonic can come in here. He's usually pretty good at projecting, but I feel like I saw a projection in the last few weeks for a contract for Travis Etienne to be like 4 years, $34 million or something. Well, now we're talking about $8.5 million a year. $8.5 million a year instead of $14 million, to me, makes a lot more sense. So the long-term deal for a running back doesn't make sense, but the actual per-year value, I'll pay $8.5 million for my best player to come back or one of my best players to come back. That seems reasonable if you carve the contract to be basically like a 2-year deal that you can get out from in a couple of seasons. So now I'm kind of wrestling back and forth with myself where I'm kind of thinking, okay, gone. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't think they're tagging him to, well, wait a minute. If the deal's going to be around $8.5 million or something like that with somebody else, why wouldn't the Jags just do it per year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only argument of that is going to be if you want to match somebody, somebody's probably going to eventually pay higher for Travis Etienne. And I'm not sure if Travis Etienne would take the hometown discount. I think at the running back position, you take the money, the most money where you can go because your shelf life is so limited. So I do think the offers will be higher on other teams, and obviously you get ahead of that with the franchise tag. Hamby, you got the numbers?
So the franchise tag, the top 5 numbers. So obviously the franchise tag at $14.5 million is an average of the top 5, right? That's how they get that number. But you're going to get Saquon with an AAV of 20, McCaffrey 19, Derrick Henry 15, Jonathan Taylor 14, Alvin Kamara 12. So he'd be slotted in really as the 4th highest paid running back because that 14.5, he would be right above Jonathan Taylor for a 1 year, which is why I don't believe any running backs have been tagged. I know obviously in the last year because only T. Higgins and Trey Smith, they were only players in the NFL that were tagged last year. So it feels like NFL teams are waning off of this somewhat. Maybe last year was just not the greatest year for it. Maybe it just didn't fit situationally. But it seems like teams are relying on this less and less. That being said, Austin, the question I have for you is, when the Jags first traded, when we first thought about the trade of Tank Bigsby, it was all right. Well, I mean, that's because Travis Etienne has far surpassed every expectation that the coaching staff had for him. Like they didn't really know what they were going to get with him, and he outperformed it. So the backfield was his. Should we look back on the Tank Bigsby trade at all when now trying to decide what the Jags will do here? Does it have any relevancy still now about 6 months later?
Just to kind of, you mean like, should we look back at the Tank Bigsby trade to see is there any foresight to what they're going to do in the future, right? That's what you're saying, basically. Yeah, and I think that definitely warrants consideration because, after a 13-win season, the Tank Bigsby trade's almost an afterthought, right? And I think that comes down to more you had a guy in Tank Bigsby who didn't necessarily fit the role of what the Jaguars were trying to do on offense. Even though, he had a respectable, career in Jacksonville, and there were some exciting things, and it was supposed to be a split backfield between Tank and Travis. I think, Liam Cohen eventually realized, hey, he may be a good running back, but he's not going to be a good running back for us. And to me, that's the Evan Ingram effect a little bit. Evan Ingram, at the time, we were all upset because, the Jaguars traded him away to Denver when we thought he was going to be the go-to tight end of the team. Well, enter Brenton Strange, who fits the mold of the offense a lot better. I think they had the same thing considered for Travis Etienne. Now, the biggest question, to go along with you, Hamby, is did Liam Cohen think it was going to be a Rashad White, Bucky Irvin situation where eventually Tootin would come in and take all the reps because he's the younger, more explosive guy? That may have been the thought. And maybe they didn't foresee the fact that Travis Etienne was going to have a career year, and now they're kind of stuck in limbo of, okay, well, do we go with Tootin or do we bring back Etienne? So I would put some solace in the Tank Bigsby trade, but at the same time, I think it's a little different because this isn't Rashad White, Bucky Irvin. This is Travis Etienne, who was your leading running back by far last year compared to Tootin.
It's crazy. To be honest with you, it's wild that the two positions the Jags are after right now, and not after, but that are in question about the franchise tag or paying guys, which is Devin Wood, linebacker, and Etienne, running back. Doesn't it feel like the franchise tag number in particular is way overvaluing what their worth is? It's just $14 million for the franchise tag. I think Delphonic just mentioned to us he's seen a couple of projections. Here's the projections from Spotrac: 2 year, $14 million, $7 million a year. $7 million a year. And you can get 2 years if you give him a deal, according to Spotrac. Now, PFF says 3 years, $34 million. That's more like $11 million a year. But my point is, $14 million is an extreme overpay for 1 year versus what you could potentially do over multi-seasons. And the same with Devin Lloyd. I think we looked this up the other day, guys, like the linebackers, highest paid linebackers are like 20-something million. Why is that so skewed on the franchise tag to $27 million? Is that because of the pass rush ability of linebackers now? Is that being kind of pushed into that? Hamby, do you know?
Yeah,
I just don't understand why the tag for linebackers is so high. And when we looked it up the other day, like the highest paid linebackers in the league, at least true linebackers, are like $20 million a season.
Yeah, Fred Warner is the highest paid inside linebacker at $21 million. So obviously, if the franchise tag number is an average of the top 5, and that number for Devin Lloyd hypothetically would be over 21, that means it's not just calculating the inside linebackers. It's also calculating guys like T.J. Watt, Josh Hines-Allen, $28 million, $30 million.
Yeah.
So it's including outside linebackers, which I feel like they should change. They should obviously have pass rush linebackers outside, and then, a Will and Sam inside. That should be something else, but they don't. So that's why, Devin Lloyd almost seems less likely than Travis Etienne, because that number is just so high. In no scenario will you ever pay a weak side linebacker $26 million. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. And Delphonic and others are saying it. And I mean, that's what the T.J. Watt number, for instance, is included, even though we don't look at T.J. Watt as a linebacker, right? So they've morphed that in. And by the way, I think the players and everybody fought for that because there was so much hybrid nature to that position. And even, let's be honest, Devin Lloyd has a hybrid nature to his position. He rushes the passer too, but I think he does represent more linebacker than edge rusher in this instance. And so therefore the number is so insane that it just wouldn't make sense for the Jaguars to go that route at all. But the number really varies from $7 to $11 million in terms of the projections per year. I think 11 might be on the high end for Etienne. I'd say, okay, let's try to go in the draft or find a cheaper option. But if it's like 7 or 8 million, I just come back to like, wow, that seems very reasonable to be able to say I can keep Travis Etienne for $7-8 million, even if it is for a few years. In the chat, fellas, just I really wanted to get what the chat was saying about this topic and how they feel about it, how Jags fans feel about Etienne right now. And YB400 says, damn, they need to tag Etienne or Devin Lloyd. I just don't see it happening at all in that regard. Got to pay our core players, he says. I can't imagine Etienne would turn down $10 million from Jacksonville. I mean, who knows? I want Etienne in Jacksonville, but if not, KC or New Orleans make the most sense, says Daniel Kilkenny. YB400 comes back to, didn't we always say we need blue-chip players? Isn't Etienne a blue-chip player? I don't know about that, Austin. Is Etienne a blue-chip player? Saquon Barkley's a blue-chip player. I don't know if people look at Etienne as a blue-chipper. I think he's probably the next level down is how he would most likely be described by a lot of scouts and GMs.
Well, this is why I wanted to exercise with Hamby, because I wanted to see who the top 5, highest paid running backs were, and then they compare them to what Travis Etienne means to the team. So he mentioned Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that offense, I get it. You got Jalen Hurts, and you got A.J. Brown, but like that offense and what they do there, they run through Saquon Barkley. Derrick Henry, it's the Baltimore Ravens, right? Like they probably didn't use him enough towards the start of the season, but like that's their offense when Lamar Jackson especially banged up. Ham, you said Jonathan Taylor,
Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, so those top 4 are the offense. I get you had George Kittle sprinkle him on and everything, but like that offense goes to Christian McCaffrey. That offense, the only guy that doesn't go through, I feel like, is Alvin Kamara, right? Because now they're kind of transitioning in New Orleans. So then I was going to get on the question of, okay, well, you see how important those guys are to their teams. Do you think Travis Etienne is as important to Saquon Barkley in Philly as, Travis Etienne is to in Jacksonville? And I think that's up for debate. I think you had a guy in the beginning of the season when they focused on running the football was just as important as Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Jonathan Taylor. Maybe didn't have quite the numbers or the carries, but was just as important. As the year progressed, then you started to become a more pass-first type of team, and he was important in the pass game, right? When they couldn't run the football, they relied on Travis Etienne in the short pass game. But I'm not sure if I can sit here and say, okay, Etienne's just as important to Jacksonville as Derrick Henry is in Baltimore or as Saquon Barkley is in Philly. And if that's the conversation that we're having, then you maybe have to look at yourself and say, is he worth the franchise tag?
Yeah, I think a good thought. I think this is a really interesting one, and a lot of it will come down to what his agent or what the Jags feel and how they feel. And there's one other element here, and let's go all business, because again, I think if Travis Etienne and his representation were listening to this show, I think, and they listen to it a lot, they know that there are two guys sitting here that are huge fans of Travis Etienne overall and have defended him. But I'm going to go total business side here and say, don't you have to ask yourself not necessarily how much is left. I think he's going to be like 28 years old. But have you gotten the best out of Travis Etienne? He played a lot in college now. And we've asked this about other backs like Derrick Henry and other things. But Etienne got the ball a lot in college. Now, he wasn't like a pound the rock in between the tackles guy, but got a lot of work. He's got a pretty good amount of work here, and he's also performed really well. Performed really well at Clemson, performed really well here overall. And so I guess what I would ask myself is was that the best we're going to see, or is there more to get? Because the other question you start to ask yourself is, how do we replace? Can we replace? Can we fill those shoes? Or even a better question maybe to ask is, can we elevate? Because you're trying to get better at every position if possible. So I don't know the answers to all those questions. I think I really don't. I just don't know the answers. And I think it all comes down to, okay, if it's like, hey, $7 or $8 million, 3-year deal for $8 million a year, I like that answer. If it's 3 years for $35+ million, I'm not sure I like that answer as much anymore. And so we just don't know what kind of numbers would be floated around. But and honestly, we don't really know if there are any numbers even being floated around from the Jacksonville side. They might have already said, hey, we're moving on. He's going to hit the market.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm James Gladstone, if I'm Liam Cohen, the most important question is, if Travis Etienne leaves, then what's the plan? And I think right now, if you say, okay, if he goes, the plan's going to be we're going to rely on Tootin and LaQuinn Allen, that to me is too hopeful because the sample size is too small. And I think knowing James Gladstone, he's the type of guy where it's like, okay, if we're going to move on, there better be a legit plan B, right? Jacoby Myers was a plan B, and that worked out swimmingly. So I'll say this much. I think if they let Travis Etienne walk and he goes someplace else, there better be a plan in place to get another running back, maybe whatever it's a free agent, or I guess you have to dress in the draft again, but there better be a plan in place to help bolster that room a little bit. Not to say that I don't believe in Tootin. It's just I don't want to put hope in a season. I want to put a sure thing. And right now, it's not a sure thing that Tootin and LaQuinn Allen can carry this load until we see it for ourselves.
Yeah, and so I guess one more question on the running back stuff. I mentioned I saw a projection about Kenneth Walker. I think it's a good running back class overall. But would the Jags, let's just assume Etienne's gone, should they be interested in one of those kind of guys, the Kenneth Walkers of the world, the Breece Halls of the world? Or do you see a third-round draft pick coming to Jacksonville in the draft, because the Jags have 3 third-round draft picks right now, and they're going to invest in a young guy?
I mean, I would almost say it's probably going to be more of the draft, because if you're willing to let Travis Etienne walk and then you're going to bring in Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, what's the point of that? Like, you have a guy who has had a rapport now with the starting quarterback in Trevor Lawrence for 8 years. I assume they're pretty damn good friends, having played in college together. So you're going to let that relationship go and bring in a guy in Kenneth Walker, who I understand, like, helped the team to a Super Bowl and everything, but, like, do you see him fitting the offense that Liam Cohen wants to fit? Now, I'm the first one to say he's decent in the pass game, but is he Travis Etienne in the pass game? Absolutely not. So then how does Kenneth Walker fit this system? And he's probably going to cost you even more than Travis Etienne's going to be worth. So it's hard to justify that one. And then who's the other player you brought up?
I think Breece. What did I say?
Hall.
Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, Breece Hall, is a possibility. Probably comes at a little bit more of a discount. But once again, like, is the discount worth, ruining the continuity that you had between two Clemson guys who were teammates for how long? I don't think so.
Yeah, and, I guess I'll go one more on this. Why not? Here we are. I do wonder when you get these kind of situations, especially one that can be debated. And again, dollars and cents really come into play. And I've seen a couple of comments in the chat, so let me address this, about like hometown discounts. I don't believe in those. I kind of just chuckle at the hometown discount stuff. That ain't a thing. Like, the Jags are good. The tax dollars are good here, but they're also good in Texas and Tennessee and other places. The Jags aren't the only one that you get a home, a no state income tax. Now, it certainly could help. But the hometown discount part of playing with Trevor or playing for a team that might be a Super Bowl contender, that ain't it. Playing in the warm weather, maybe that comes into play a little bit, but not to the tune of millions of dollars being lost in a contract. So I just don't believe in the hometown discount, especially for a running back. This is his time. This is his chance to go get his money. He's got one of those chances in his career, essentially, as a running back. And you got to go get the money. Like, you just have to go get the money wherever it is. Now, if it's marginal and it's equal, well, then all these other factors start coming into play. So I just don't buy the hometown discount. But the thing I was going to say is you mentioned Trevor a couple of times. And, yeah, I think these guys obviously know each other. Talk about continuity. Trevor's got a situation where he's got his whole coaching staff back for the first time in his NFL career. Does he want to continue continuity? He's got his offensive line back. Could he have his running back room back? Have his receiving room back? Like, does he go to the wall for Etienne? Because it's not like Trent Baalke's in the building, who drafted him, and he's going to go to the wall for Etienne, right? It's not like I don't believe Udinski as the OC or Chad Morton as the running back guy are going to be like going to the wall for Etienne over the top. They don't have 3, 4, 5 years history with him. So who is the guy that might be in knocking on that door like, hey, man, I think we got to have this guy back? And really that comes down to Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know how much Trevor's going to do that in this particular situation or any situation for that matter. But I think he's really the only one, Austin, that would probably inside the building be maybe waving the pom-poms for Etienne to come back. I mean, all his teammates are and other things. I'm just saying, like, really say, hey, we need this guy back.
Yeah, and he should, because at the end of the day, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I just came off of an MVP type of season, right? I was top 5 in MVP voting. That means something. So if I'm Trevor Lawrence and I say, okay, I had the best season by far of my career, why wouldn't I want to run it back with as many guys that from that offense from last year, and now we're going to add more wrinkles, and now it's a year of understanding the playbook? Why wouldn't we want to run that back? Like, to me, it's a no-brainer. So, yeah, I think if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm definitely campaigning to keep my former collegiate teammate, now Jacksonville Jaguar teammate Travis Etienne.